What's going on, everybody? My name is Ben and welcome back to the bench for a brand new episode of Rivals and Adversaries. We are back on the A6M3 Model 320, and today we're going to focus on the cockpit. We're going to go ahead and do some priming, some painting, some detail painting. Go ahead and get that photo etch all nicely installed, try to get everything buttoned up into the fuselage, and then wrap it up for the day. So let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, guys, let's go ahead and gather all the parts and pieces for the cockpit. Now, there's a couple of areas that I haven't really touched just yet, and that's the instrument panel. We need to go ahead and put that together, and I'm going to be using the flat instrument panel because I want to add the photo etch on top of that. And let's talk a little bit about the photo etch. I got to tell you, some of the plastic parts are super well detailed, and I feel kind of bad about cutting off all the plastic just to go ahead and put a piece of metal down on top of that. So in certain cases, I'm just going to go ahead and leave the actual plastic alone. Other cases, like for the instrument panel and the side instrument consoles, we're going to go ahead and remove the detail and we're going to use the photo etch. I think that's a nice compromise. Things like the radio equipment in here has a lot of really nice 3D detail, and I just couldn't bring myself to go ahead and slice all of that off. I think photo etch is best used with kits that lack a lot of detail, and in this case, this kit has a ton of it already in the plastic. So we're going to be kind of sparing with some of the photo etch. But let's go ahead and jump into our first time lapse, and we're going to start off with some part cleanup. We're going to prime everything with Mr. Surfacer 1200, thinned out with some Mr. Leveling Thinner, and then we'll get into that blue-green primer. We'll go ahead and get some of our Mitsubishi interior green, then get some detail painting going. All right, guys, let's get it started. Let's see what we can do. All right, everybody, we are back. I'm going to take a little bit of a pause here in the time lapse to talk a bit about the paint. Now, I'm using this Tamiya Deep Green to go ahead and paint a couple of the equipment pieces a little different color. Now, I've actually heard that some of these Zeros had the interior green, but also had some darker green for different pieces like the radio, the Morse code, platform, stuff like that. So we're going to go ahead and kind of replicate that here by adding a tiny bit of deep green onto those different parts. If I use a photo etch, it would just be interior green, but I wanted to change it up a little bit, so this gives me a good excuse to go ahead and save that photo etch for something else. So let's go ahead and jump back into the time lapse though. We have a lot more photo etch to contend with. I want to go ahead and detail paint a lot more of the interior cockpit, and of course get everything nicely assembled and then get everything buttoned up. So let's go ahead and jump back on in there, guys. We still got the seat and the belts to do. A lot more work here, so let's get back to it. All right, everybody, so we are back, and so far the cockpit is coming together. We've got the interior green all nicely applied. We've got the detail painting in there, some switches and dials picked out with white, black, and of course red as well. So we are looking pretty decent here, and now we're going to go ahead and start finishing up the installation process and get everything buttoned up. Now you notice I did install the cockpit sidewalls into the fuselage without going ahead and hooking them to the cockpit floor, just because I saw a guy do that and it looked like it worked a little bit better. So that's what we're going to do here, and that means we need to go ahead and finish up the last bits and pieces of the cockpit, like the instrument panel and the gun supports. So let's go ahead and do that now. These are super simple. They just drop right down on top of these two supports. I want to say these are probably like ammo bays or something like that, but they drop right on top of that and they fit in the very front of the cockpit floor. So this is going to be something we can just snap right on in there. Also, the instrument panel, because I've glued both of the sidewalls into the fuselage, we're going to have to go ahead and tack in the instrument panel to one of the sides of the fuselage and then kind of build everything else around that. And that actually works really, really well. It fits beautifully. So I think it's a good choice. We'll go ahead and tack in the cockpit floor with just a little bit of our cement S. And of course, we shored up our instrument panel with a little bit of super glue to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. But yeah, you can see it's starting to come to life. It's looking pretty good. And the front gun area is going to be a little tricky because we can't just drop it straight down as we could if we had this as a separate unit. But that's okay. We can actually kind of pivot it in a little bit there and we can push it down into the cockpit floor. A little bit of our Mr. Cement S and it'll shore it up. We'll be good to go. I will go ahead and have to readjust those guns slightly, but I think we're on the right track. And one part you don't want to forget here for the fuselage is the rear arrestor hook and tail wheel insert. Want to make sure we get that in. And honestly, it's a little over-engineered. I don't know really why these are separate parts. I really don't get it. But I mean, again, this kit tends to be a bit more over-engineered than I think it needs to be. But honestly, the detail is still awesome. So yeah, just two parts together, glue those in and drop them into the fuselage and you're good to go. Now we'll go ahead and put the fuselage halves together, and I did a little bit of test fitting here and they look to be really spot on. And yeah, I can confirm this drops into place perfectly. I won't have to worry much about any sort of seams or openings. I will have to go ahead and sand a little bit, but I think we are really in good hands. A little bit of Mr. Cement S pushed together, hardly any issue whatsoever. So I am super happy with how this is coming together. Now we have an insert that drops down right on top, covers up very front of that instrument panel, and then of course covers over on the guns. You do see the guns poking out the front there, but that fits honestly perfectly, just drops right into place. So yeah, no complaints whatsoever. And there we have it, guys. The fuselage is all together. The cockpit is inside. We've got everything buttoned up. The fit on this thing is beautiful. No issues whatsoever with seams. All the parts dropped right into place. And I even changed up the order of operations just a little bit there for the cockpit and still didn't have any trouble getting this all together. Let's zoom in real quick here and show you some of the details. The plastic with the photo etch, everything blends together to make a super nice, very detailed looking cockpit. I didn't have to do that much scratch building. I just added a couple of wires off to the side, which you can kind of see around the chair and around the side of the left and right side of the cockpit. I think everything dropped into place really well. And if you decided not to add anything in there, you're still going to get a lot of detail out of this. So super happy with how this turned out. Even though a little bit over-engineered, I really like how this went together. Next episode, we're going to come on back and probably work a little bit on the seams. I just got to sand them down with a very light sandpaper, and then we can go ahead and mask the canopies, paint the top of the canopy coping, and then we can drop everything in place and get to work on the wings. Now the wings themselves do have some extra parts and pieces there on the rear of the fuselage, which you might see looking down through the cockpit, so we'll go ahead and add those next episode. I'm always a little concerned with the wing to fuselage joint right in the back there, and this fits beautifully. So I don't think we're going to have any issue getting this all together. We'll see when we get a little bit farther and we get the wing tops on, we get the landing gear bays in there, because those are multi-part, so they could kind of alter how everything fits together just a little bit, but we're going to be super careful with that. So highly recommended. This kit is fantastic. But anyway, guys, we're going to go ahead and call it quits for today. I want to thank you so much for coming along here on episode 3. Make sure to go over to Joe's channel, check out his Corsair. It's coming along beautifully. I think it's going to be a wonderful addition to his collection. And we'll see you back here on the next episode of Rivals and Adversaries for more of our A6M3 Model 32-0. Until then, you know the drill. Go out there, get yourself some bench time, have some fun, build something cool, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you soon.